recording. Okay, so welcome to this first podcast. Today we will be talking about podcasts.
Do we have a name for this podcast?
No. Doesn't
Alright,
matter.
cool.
We'll come up with one eventually, maybe.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, so first question. Who makes podcasts? What are podcasts for?
What are podcasts for?
Yeah.
Well, I think of a podcast as something to just listen to, either like on a really long car ride, an especially long one, like 2 or 3 hours, something like that, or just while I'm playing a video game, but I don't really want to pay attention to the video game. I want to listen to something too, because I'm ADHD. Not really, but
I think they're more for people to release what they have on the inside, like if they have thoughts or burning questions to ask the world. That could be a valid source of outputting that energy. That was
If you
very
seek out the
poorly
right
phrased.
podcast, then you get people who just validate your own opinions.
Oh yeah, that too. That's a very good point. All right. Next question is, what are they going to do?
What are podcasts going to do?
It's what are they going to do?
Are they sentient? Are they going to take over the world?
I don't
Is
know, maybe.
podcast not like an abstract concept anymore? Is it not something that people just do? Podcasts have now become a thing, and they are able to do things.
I mean, maybe.
Because if that's the case, maybe they're already taking over, and we don't know. Like
Maybe
we just have no idea.
Have you ever
This is
seen a
podcast
podcast
dominant.
outside?
No, I've never seen a podcast.
That's crazy.
So like Bigfoot, do podcasts exist?
Do they? I don't know. Also, maybe they don't want you to see them. Maybe that's why you've never seen them. They're just hiding from you.
I've got enough government conspiracies going on in my head.
Oh, this isn't government. This is way past government.
Oh, this is a private conspiracy.
Oh yeah, no. The podcasts are their own entity, and they're taking over.
Oh my god,
There's nothing you can do, Andrew.
this is getting way too real for me. Getting way too intense. I don't know how I'm gonna be able to handle this.
All right. The next question I have is, when are they coming home?
When are the, I think there's a lot of meaning behind that statement. Maybe this is just an example of people wanting to branch out their market, as in they want to listen to podcasts more diverse and out there, and sometimes weird podcasts or podcasts from a country they don't even live in, and people are starting to wonder, like, okay, now when are podcasts gonna come home? Are podcasts gonna be as grounded as they once were? Are they gonna be just as laid back? And I don't even know where I'm going with this. The point is, there's so many of them, and they're so all over the place. Will they ever return to where they once were? I don't think so. Podcasts are never coming home. They ran away.
The podcasts are aliens, and they came here, and that's why you've never seen them, because they know how to hide from us. And so that relates to the question before. They are taking over.
Are you pitching a remake of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, but it's podcasts?
Maybe one day they'll just come home or go home. Maybe they'll take us with them. I'd like to see the podcast home.
I want to see the podcast planet. What do you think it's all about?
How do you know
what
it's
do you think
a planet,
the podcast planet looks like? That's right. Maybe they came from a star or a black hole.
Or something we've never seen before. Like a pod house.
maybe they all live in pods.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
And they cast spells.
Yeah.
Oh no. But no. Okay, let's assume it's a planet, though. Let's assume that they live on a planet. What do you think this planet looks like?
I don't know. I think that podcasts live multiple dimensions above our comprehension. So
it's like Interstellar. You've ever seen Interstellar?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's love, Murph. That scene at the end where he's going around the 5-dimensional space or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's like that. You just play strings on the back of bookshelves to communicate with your daughter, and that's where
Right.
podcasts live.
Yeah, that's the dimension podcasts are from. Interstellar. Interesting fact. Interstellar was about the invasion of podcasts.
Little did we know that the blight that was starving all of humanity and created the second Dust Bowl was actually podcasts.
Yeah, it's
They were
crazy.
also the ones communicating with us, living in the fifth dimension. You know, Matthew McConaughey said it was us. What if we are podcasts?
Oh
What
shit.
if when we ascend to the fifth dimension, we become podcasts?
You're onto something.
I think podcasts are our future selves.
All right.
We're all destined to be a podcast. And that's why we've never seen one, because we don't know what happens after death. We all fear death because it's the great mystery of life. What happens after we die? We become podcasts. That's why we've never seen one.
Yes, that is very valid. All right, back to this planet of podcasts. Let's say they have a planet. Let's imagine a planet. What kind of entertainment would podcasts have there? Would they read books titled Harry Potter?
No. They just so
do they smoke pod?
Since every podcast, since we've already determined that we become podcasts, that's what happens.
Okay.
I think that their entertainment and their culture is a weird mirrored reflection of ours. The only difference is that every single title of every piece of media is some kind of pod pun.
Yes.
Right?
So,
and Anakin Skywalker in episode 1, right? Now, this is pod racing. That won an Oscar. That won an Oscar on the podcast planet.
Yeah. I love that podcast scene in Star Wars.
Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Podcast.
They're racing their podcasts through the desert.
But I think it would be the fastest podcast.
Fastest podcast?
Yeah.
I mean, it's Anakin. He won the podcast.
Right. I guess we all underestimated his podcast.
Yeah. I mean, he didn't have the biggest podcast, but obviously it was the best.
He had the podcast that won our hearts.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
So do you think they would have so yeah, you said you thought they would have very similar entertainment, but just with pod puns in the title.
Right.
But wouldn't everything just be the podcast form of what it is in this world? Like, would a video game just be a podcast about a video game?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe that's it. Maybe actually every piece of entertainment there is just a podcast talking about pieces of entertainment. But the piece of entertainment they talk about, like, they don't have access to them. It's just a podcast about movies or about video games or about books, whatever.
What if their podcasts are podcasts about podcasts, like this one right here?
Like, yeah, I was going to say,
tied
just
this
listening
whole
to
thing
us.
together. Boom!
Wow, you brought it back full circle.
All right. Well,
This is like 2001 all over again.
yeah, it's crazy. Okay. Next question then. If podcasts could talk, what would they say?
Isn't the whole point of a podcast that people talk? But is
the people
podcast
talk.
itself talking?
But what if the podcast could talk?
But if the podcast could talk, I think it'd just all be sponsors. I think it would all just be advertisements.
Yeah.
Buy voice me undies, buy me undies. You know.
This
Sound like
podcast
people
is not sponsored.
No, we can't offer that yet.
That must be hell on the podcast planet. It must be overrun by sponsors. You can't do anything. I mean, on this planet too. Let's be real. But
I think on the podcast planet, it's such a problem that there will soon be like a revolution. It's going to be the podcast civil war because people are tired of the advertisements. That's all they see. That's
right.
all they see. All the podcasts are all tired of advertisements, and they're going to fight for their freedom. to live in a free podcast world. What would be the motto for that revolution? Or what would be the big, it's like, with the French Revolution we had liberté, égalité, fraternité, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what about the podcast revolution? What do you think is there?
Well, what was the American Revolution?
What did you say?
What was the American Revolution battle cry?
The American Revolution, that was I swear I know this. You know what? I'll get back to you on that.
All right. It'd be something really stupid with a pun.
What would be the slogan for a podcast revolution? That's the big question. I'm thinking.
That is a good question.
Live in a spot or something like that.
Hold on. Let's do a little bit of research here.
All right. What you got for me?
So I'm looking up battle cries.
Okay. We're gonna do some D&D stuff right now. Let's personalize our own battle cry. God, we need to play D&D.
Man, these battle cries are awful.
Like what? Like, give me some awful battle cries.
All right. Bonsai.
That's. Oh my god. Do you know the context?
Nope.
Okay, no. Bonsai is something that. No, as far as I know, this is my limited historical knowledge here. I don't know what I'm talking about half the time. But as far as I remember, bonsai is something that Japanese soldiers would cry in World War II.
Oh yeah, there is a paragraph under it that says that. Still,
exactly.
I'm not gonna lie, it sounds stupid.
Oh no, you're disgracing centuries of Japanese tradition right there, my friend.
Yeah. How about this? Yell.
Yell.
Yeah.
It's just yell. That's it.
Yep.
The word, like they're not even yelling; they're just saying the word yell.
It's the word yell.
Whose revolution was that?
It says the American Civil War.
Of course it was.
The Confederates. No, it was probably actually a yell, but they called it the rebel yell. And yeah, the picture.
Maybe it's just a whole bunch of Southerners saying Yale, like Yale University.
Oh yeah,
but because they're from the South, we all thought they were saying Yale.
Yeah, no, these battle cries are not very podcast friendly, if you ask me.
No. The great yell. I can't get over that.
All right.
Just the word. Okay, what else we got?
Let's move on, because podcast battle cries aren't going to write themselves. That doesn't make any sense, but who cares? All right. What are the unwritten rules of podcasts?
The unwritten rules. Okay, this could actually be a serious thing. Don't beg for sponsors, ever.
Right.
Don't, under no circumstance do you beg or plead or go, hey, please, somebody sponsor us right now. Just shoot us an email real quick. It's Chorkle Forks, all that.
Right, because then you're going to get killed in the podcast revolution.
Exactly. If you cry for sponsors, then the podcast rebellion is going to come after you. Okay. Unwritten rules. What else? I don't know. Other than that, it's like don't cry for sponsors. I mean, some people just kind of do that anyway.
I think
keep it interesting.
One of the rules is you're not allowed to talk. Because
what
would a podcast be if you could talk? Like, you'd just be interrupting the podcast the whole time. I don't understand how that would make sense if you could talk during a podcast.
But yeah, sure. No, this is too much. What? But wait. So, what is the podcast then? What are you listening to if nobody's talking?
The podcast.
What are you listening to?
From the podcast planet. They come here. We listen to them. They slowly take over our brains, but and then they go back home to fight in their revolution. It's pretty simple, if you ask me.
They go home to fight. But wait, what is the actual content? I know we've never seen one.
Right.
Nobody's ever seen one.
No, never.
What? So let's theorize then. What do we think they look like?
They probably have tentacles.
Definitely have tentacles. Like 100%. There's just no denying that. I think they walk sideways like crabs.
Probably, yeah. Yeah. They probably
saying hi, instead of saying hi, they say, "Hey, welcome to the podcast." They just say that every greeting.
I think that they have some features in other dimensions that we can't really perceive.
Oh, that's right. They're fifth dimensional beings. What am I saying?
But, and like that just makes them look really fucking stupid here. But to them, they look really fucking cool. And if we could see them in the fifth dimension, they would look hella cool.
Think of it this way. I mean, I remember reading a quote somewhere that made a lot of sense, right? You look at a bug and you think, my God, I would never want to look like that. Well, a bug looks at you and it's probably like, my God, I never want to look like that.
Right.
Because
I'm saying, if we could see them in the fifth dimension, they would look fucking rad.
They probably would.
But they look dumb as hell right here.
Exactly. Because
that's why we don't see them.
Third-dimensional minds can't handle it.
That's why we don't see them, because they hide from us, because they're fucking ugly.
we find out the great mystery. We've never seen one because they're incredibly self-conscious.
Yep.
Maybe there's just a deeper meaning right there. Like a lot of people who do podcasts, you don't usually see their face.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maybe it's just a whole bunch of self-consciousness right there.
Yep.
Let's overanalyze that. I love overanalyzing things.
All right. Next question. This one's that's a great question.
All right. Well, I mean, you're the one who came up with it, so
yes.
Way to pat yourself on the back there, Timbo.
No problem. How many chickens would it take to build a podcast?
What? What does that have to do with anything?
Don't worry about it.
Okay. How many chickens? Well, obviously, first we need to look at the question: what came first? The chicken or the podcast?
Right. The chicken or the podcast? What came first?
Exactly.
Well,
I think it was the chicken. I think the chickens are the ancestors.
Show me your evidence.
Podcasts of these fifth dimensional beings. What did you say?
Show me your evidence.
Okay.
Prove that the chicken came first.
I will prove it right now, because let's assume that the chickens are the ancestors of these fifth dimensional beings. Let's take a look at it, right? So these beings, these podcasts, they're pretty rad, right?
Right.
They're pretty rad. Chickens, you know what their ancestors were?
What?
Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Oh.
You know what Tyrannosaurus Rex was?
No.
Pretty rad.
Yeah.
We got a long line of pretty rad going on right here.
Right,
so
right.
I think it makes sense.
Right. But I have a point that will destroy anything you just said right now.
Oh, okay. Give it to me.
We live in the fourth dimension, right? Which happens to be what?
I thought we lived in the third dimension.
No, we live in the fourth dimension.
And have I been lied to this whole time?
Yes.
Am I just not paying attention?
The fourth dimension is time. Right?
Okay.
We cannot affect or go through time, but we live in it. The podcasts live in the fifth dimension, so they can move freely through time as they please. Therefore, neither of them came first.
But but wait. For this fifth dimensional being to exist, right?
Right.
Don't we need a foundation? To have 5 dimensions, we need 4. To have 4, we need 3.
Right.
So on and so forth. We keep adding them on.
Right.
I'm not a physicist. I can't think of the rest of this. I'm not about to argue dimensions. I don't know anything about it.
Have you ever read what was it, Slaughterhouse-Five?
No, I don't think so.
That is a goddamn good book, and it
Really?
kind of tackles the whole fifth dimension. I don't know if it's fifth dimension specifically, but
See,
it's good.
I don't know how well I'd handle that because I mean I watched Interstellar and that's a pretty simple. When you look at it, it's a pretty simple theory on the fifth dimension and all that, and it messed with my mind a little too much.
That,
I don't think I'm ready for that book.
Still, I recommend it. It's a very good book.
All right. Ooh, okay. That just reminded me of it's a little off topic here, but that just reminded me of like Stephen King's Dark Tower series, which I have been. And apparently, I think I'm trying to remember because it's been a while. Like I've been reading these books for like the last 2 years, and I'm only on book 3. So give me a second. But I think you ever seen The Mist? You ever seen that movie The Mist or read the book? Right?
No.
Okay. Do you know the premise?
Not really.
Okay, so for everyone who doesn't know the premise, it's a small town.
All 3 people listening to us.
Exactly. For all of you listening, everyone doesn't know the premise. It's a small town in I forget what state it is. I was gonna say Maine, but that's it. A giant mist just starts rolling through, this really thick mist, like you can't see 2 feet in front of you.
How thick?
And these people end up trapped in a store by the mist, and they won't go outside because in the mist are all these freaking weird demon like half-life creatures that will rip you to shreds the minute they see you.
Right.
But they're hiding in the mist, so you can't see them. Well, Stephen King's Dark Tower series kind of connects all of Stephen King's books ever, and throws them into one universe, because the whole point of like the world that Roland lives in or the Dark Tower is it's like a nexus for every universe. Right. And so a lot of Stephen King characters and books are either referenced or just straight up in the Dark Tower for a while. And at one point, they reference the creatures from the mist as the beings. I think I could be wrong because it's been a while, but I think they reference the creatures from the mist as the beings that inhabit the space between dimensions. So maybe they have something to do with this.
Is there space between the dimensions, though?
I guess possibly. It could be minuscule, but I mean, it's enough to spawn a bunch of weird half-life creatures.
But like, how do you determine that? Because let's say between the first and the second dimension, which is the dot to the line.
Right.
What's the space between that?
I mean, all right. If you were to draw a dot
right.
and then a line,
right, and
then look at it with a microscope,
right,
there might be a little tiny like nanometer space between them at some point, because
that's because you draw it with a pencil. But
right.
I'm talking about like theoretically, a dot to the line. There's a dot on every single possible point across that line. That's what a line is.
Exactly.
So, how can there be space between the first and the second dimension? That's crazy.
I wasn't ready for this. I wasn't ready for this at all.
Okay, let's leave that for marinating in our thoughts. And
yeah, let's let that one marinate.
We'll move on to the next question, which, all right, is it? How do you feel about putting podcasts on your pizza?
Oh my god! I'm pretty sure that's a war crime. I mean, if we've established that these are fifth dimensional beings, right?
Is it?
One, how could they exist in a 3-dimensional pizza?
Do we? Well, they exist in all the dimensions under them. I mean,
right.
Technically, that's true. We exist in all the dimensions. Right.
But we can only perceive the 3 or the 4 or whatever.
Yeah, we can move through 3, and we can, when we're living in the 4th.
Right. Okay.
Perceiving the 4th. Right. That's a better way.
Now, that said,
They can move through all four that we perceive and experience the fifth.
okay, you obviously know more about dimensions than I do, so I'm just gonna take your advice on this. Um, if they're the
Wait.
pizza,
You cut out a little bit.
sorry, I was saying,
Okay.
if these are intelligent, sentient beings,
Right.
and we use them as toppings on a pizza,
Yes.
that's horrific.
Is it?
Yeah.
We put sentient beings on our pizza. Put fish and ham and meat. And...
Are fish sentient though? Are they aware of their own existence?
Oh.
Right. Are they aware of their own existence? Do they question their identity?
Why is that a factor in whether or not they can be on our pizza, though? Does that make their life any less valuable than ours?
Listen, man, I love ham. I love ham a lot.
Right.
And I like turkey. I'm a carnivore.
No. I get that. I do too. But what makes humans less or more valuable than
that? I think it's just because of the morals that we've set up.
Right. Okay.
In society today.
That's
it's
fair.
wrong to eat another person.
But
that's not.
Does that include all sentient beings?
I mean, yeah, I think so. Because I'm trying to think. Okay, it is wrong in our society to eat another person. Right, because that person is intelligent. That person has thoughts and feelings just like anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
are you saying that
we come across another race of sentient beings? These podcasts here. We come across these podcasts here. Right, another race of sentient beings. We find out, hey, we're not alone in the universe, and second, they are also intelligent and thinking, and have thoughts and feelings just like any person.
Right.
So, if they have that same level of intelligence, if not higher intelligence, and sentience and awareness of their existence, thoughts, feelings, then would it not also be morally wrong to eat them?
Does intelligence make it morally wrong to eat someone?
I think so.
That's fair. Just food for thought. Food for podcasts. Food for us, I guess. Okay,
oh, no.
Last question, which is also food related for some reason.
Are you hungry too?
I am not. Okay. Are podcasts soup?
No, I don't think so.
Think about it. Think about it. Okay.
All right.
You have ideas floating around in this viscosity that is the words that I'm spelling out right now, which aren't coming out very fluid at all, but
right.
It's fine. You have a bunch of ideas just floating around in this medium that is consumed by other people.
Okay. Are you saying they're alphabet soup?
Yes.
Wait, so they're not
saying
crab tentacle beings, they're all just like cans of Campbell's soup?
They're more than just alphabet soup. I think they're alphabet, word, idea, soup, all mixed together. It's like chicken noodle soup. You don't have chicken and noodles and soup. You have vegetables in there and broth and whatever the fuck else goes into chicken noodle soup.
I think that's it. No, wait, what kind of chicken noodle soup are you having? The chicken noodle soup that I have is always just chicken, noodles, and broth, which is soup.
That is sad. you should get some real chicken noodle soup.
I mean, I don't know, man. Campbell's is pretty good.
There are usually carrots in there? Like, shit.
No carrots. Just chicken,
soup.
noodles, and soup.
That's sad.
Like, that's it. It's pretty good. You should try it.
Alright, well, let's go to, like, clam chowder. That's a type of soup, right? I think
so.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's
now,
seafood.
answer me this:
variety.
Is ramen soup?
Is ramen soup?
Like, shut up, Anna. Is ramen soup? Or is it just
soup?
Noodles?
Ramen. It depends on how you eat it. Because if you eat it with all the liquidy stuff in there, then yeah, I guess it is soup.
But if you don't
pour out the liquid and just eat the noodles, then no, you're just eating noodles.
But you never see it labeled as soup ever. You know, you see the packages. You always see it ramen noodles, chicken flavored noodles.
That's
right?
true.
On the cups, cup noodles. That's all you got. Right.
Well, that's why we're debating this right now. We're trying to determine.
Right. So I think there's a distinct difference between noodles and soup.
Okay.
There just is. Now, ramen, I'm going to assume in all shapes and forms is just noodles.
Okay.
That's just, I think so. I mean, let's eat it with a broth. In that case, you're some kind of animal. But aside from that, yeah, I'm calling out people who eat ramen with the broth. You're gross. All right. Anyway. Now, because these exist as two separate things, I think, and let me get a little philosophical here. We
haven't been philosophical up to this point.
Wait, I got it. Okay, so what if we are the noodles, and the podcasts are the soup? That's what puts them above us, because they have noodles and broth. We just have noodles.
We just are noodles.
Exactly.
Shit.
We're just the noodles. They are the noodles existing in a broth. They can see the broth. They can experience the broth. They can move throughout the broth. We have no broth.
That was a good sentence right there. We have no broth.
I want to put that on a plaque. I just want to engrave it, have it on my wall.
Okay, so our conclusion is that podcasts are soup.
Podcasts are soup? I was wrong.
I changed your mind.
Yes, you did.
The point of this podcast right here.
And isn't that what life should be?
Soup up all our ideas.
Experiencing new ideas and concepts and changing your perspective sometimes.
Yeah.
Isn't that what it's all about?
Yeah.
I feel like we accomplished our goals here.
I think we did. All right. Well, to the 0 people that are still here by this point, I wish you the best of luck. Don't die to the podcasts. Maybe befriend them. Who knows? Just take them out to lunch. That could be really fun. Don't put them on your pizza. They might get offended.
Please don't put podcasts on your pizza. Don't put our podcast on your pizza.
But yeah, you can. I've heard they appreciate pod puns. So if you can fit them into your conversation rather smoothly, I would go ahead. And yeah,
awesome.
Be careful.
Please do. Podcasts can be dangerous sometimes. I'm not saying that. I have a lot of podcast friends, but sometimes it's a little rough. I'm ever in a podcast neighborhood. Yeah. I'm sorry. All right. I think I should stop talking now.
Yeah. All right. Adios.